2007. Okay. First got involved at the board level in 2007, being elected to the board, but had been around the board through various governance committees, outdoor activities, finance, training for many years. So really focus a lot of my time and energy on capacity building for the organization. What else do I want to say right now? Yeah, and recently ran again for the board, really in anticipation of some of the transitions that we're undergoing, and excited about the possibilities, about Sierra Club, really having its fullest impact in the world, because I think as an organization with lots of power and privilege, that, with that comes lots of responsibility. So I am excited to, I'll reach back to some of the things Brandon was saying, because real excited about the movement building aspects of that, about what it means to be collaborative and coordinated in realizing that power, because really our people are our power. And I think, yeah, I'll pass it on from there. Megan.
Thanks so much. My name is Meghan Sahli-Wells. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and happy Pride Month, everybody. I am in Culver City, the traditional lands of the Tongva Gabrielino Kizh, and was born and raised in Los Angeles, but spent about 15 years in France and in traveling. I had the good fortune to be able to travel a lot, and as I was a student in both in France and a lot of other countries. Professionally, I am the California Director of Elected Officials to Protect America, and my job is to organize elected officials for climate justice, which is really fantastic to be able to do this work. Before that, I was a consultant for my county supervisor, Supervisor Holly Mitchell, where, among other things, I helped to create and pass policy to end all new oil drilling and phase out existing drilling in LA County. This is something that the city of Los Angeles did as well. And in part, they were inspired by work that I did in close collaboration with Sierra Club leaders when I was an elected official in Culver City. I'm a former city council member and mayor of Culver City, and we kind of pioneered this work to stop oil drilling in what is the largest urban oil field in the United States, the Inglewood oil field. So my work with Sierra Club over the past many years has been as kind of like the person in that inside outside strategy, and working with the power of the Sierra Club to work with and help elected officials and then push ambitious and groundbreaking policy. I was the person who collaborated with the Sierra Club, not the Sierra Club person, but once I term limited out of office, then I started getting, I was approached by the West LA group of the Angeles chapter and started getting involved as an elected member of their management committee. And now in the Angeles chapter, I am on the political committee and the nominating committee right now for Angeles. In 2021, I was had the good fortune to be elected to the Sierra Club National Board, and last year became the secretary, and again am secretary this year as well for the National Board. So when I was in elected office, I passed a lot of things including 100% renewable energy, a ton of zero waste.
Megan, excuse me, Hoiyin advertised me as a strict timekeeper, so I have to live up to that. And
okay, I wasn't paying attention to the time. Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry.
I guess that sends it to me. I'm Chad Hanson. I'm on the board of directors. I've been a Sierra Club activist since 1989, officially member since 1991. Started off working on the California Desert Protection Act. Spent a lot of time doing that for years before it passed. My wife and I currently live in Kennedy Meadows at the southeastern edge of the Sierra Nevada mountains at about 7,000 feet in elevation, ancestral homelands of the Tabatalaval people. And I'm really excited to have this opportunity to talk to you all today about the strategic framework. And, it's kind of, as I see it, dual purpose of protecting nature for multiple benefits: climate change mitigation and carbon drawdown, biodiversity protection, and closing that nature equity gap that Allison mentioned. And then on the other side, energy policy and reducing our carbon emissions. And I see it as a really important, cohesive strategy to address what I see as the existential threat of our time. So really happy to talk to you all about it.
Hoiyin, you're on mute.
Yes, sorry. Nathan, is it possible to do panel view? We want to look at our board members really carefully.
Yeah, let me set that up.
Okay, so our next question, the strategic framework says, we build long-term power by running strategic campaigns. We also have read integrated campaigns, unsilo, the club speaks with one voice. But different club entities don't always get along. So can we get some practical tips on how we can respond positively to club's call for strategic campaigns and integrated campaigns? So Meghan, I'm going to pick on you because you are once on the other side. Former Culver City mayor, can you start with this?
So you're saying, how can we work more strategically together and have more coordination? Yeah. I mean, what I keep hearing over and over again is, and we had a recent email from the Council of Club Leaders about a lot of the resolutions that were coming from the Council of Club Leaders for the past several years. One of the huge themes is like communication. And I think it's something that we, on the board and all of the leaders throughout the club need to find better ways of communicating with one another, exchanging information in a way that's meaningful, right? It's a really tricky way to there's so many, there's over communication, there's ineffective communication, there's TMI, and the way we're interacting with one another, I think, is really one of the core challenges that we have, especially in a time of change and transformation. And so I think that's something that we're all working on. In our recent board meeting, we had kind of a deep dive into how we're going to be better communicating with one another throughout the organization. And so I expect to see a lot more in that. One of the things that I suggested is that we need to ask folks what they need, rather than trying to define that for them. And so I think those are some really huge priorities as we go forward, and certainly apply to the strategic framework as well.
Chad, would you like to go next?
Sure. It's an important question. It really goes to the core of our functioning as an organization and how we accomplish our mission. I think your question is ultimately a cultural question within the organization. How we communicate, how we treat one another. I've noticed over the years that there are certain divides, that we kind of fall into, the certain patterns we fall into in thinking about these divides as an organization, staff versus volunteer, national versus chapters, and things like that. I think that I understand the reasons for the thinking about that. So I don't want to minimize that, but at the same time, I don't think it's helpful to the organization and our ability to carry out our mission. So I think there's that issue. I also think there's a cultural issue about how we communicate with each other, how we treat each other with respect or not. And obviously trying to move toward a place where we treat each other with respect, especially when we disagree with one another. That's really, really important. And I don't think we can accomplish our mission unless we do a better job on that. I think, for me, the good news is I think that we are doing better on that. I feel very optimistic about how we're moving forward as an organization on both of the things I just mentioned, that those kind of constructs about the schism between national and chapter or staff and volunteer. I feel like we're doing better. I feel like we're on a better path now, and I feel optimistic about it. I also feel optimistic about the culture of the organization and the trajectory in terms of how we treat each other and treat each other with greater respect and consideration, including and especially when we disagree. How dissent is handled by majorities in chapters at the national level throughout the organization. And I think that's really, really key. And I think some of the changes in terms of the campaign and staff structure that emphasizes regional coordination, I think that's going to help. I think that a number of the things that we're doing right now are going to move us forward in a better direction. So I'm optimistic, and I would love to hear also from others on this.
Allison?
Yeah, I agree with my colleagues. I want to tell a story. I had an experience when I was living in Virginia and part of the Virginia chapter. Oh gosh, it was back in 2009 or 2010. Sierra Club, the Virginia chapter brought together, I think it was 15, 20 Virginia leaders with Communication Workers of America, some of their local leadership. And we spent 2 days together to talk about how we would collaborate. Everyone wanted to jump to the end. What are we going to do? And the facilitators for this gathering made us spend, sort of like a day and a half getting to know each other, learning about one another's histories, learning about our strengths and weaknesses, our vision, our constraints. And again, throughout that time, we were chomping at the bit to find out, to think about, what are we going to do together? And what we learned before we started planning our work together was that we had much more shared values and goals than differences. But what we appreciated at the time that we actually came to the point of planning was that we could identify things we could work on together, and then we could identify areas where there was disagreement, and we would respectfully figure out how to not be blocking to one another. And again, so for me, collaboration is about really learning to listen deeply, to understand one another, to understand one another's values, to identify that sweet spot of where's the mutuality, right? How do we collaborate to help one another rise, be better, be stronger, and show up more powerfully together? And I think that's part of our challenges. I appreciate the passion we all bring to the work. Again, one of the reasons I'm still at Sierra Club is because I have such strong belief in our people, in many of you, right? In what we do together and then how we do it. And I think that's a challenge. Can we listen to really understand one another as opposed to, figuring out how to coerce one another to believe what I believe or what, someone else believes? Can we really harvest the rich perspectives and unique advantages that individuals have to really be better collectively? I think that's the huge opportunity that really excites me. and, you know, brings me back again and again and again.
Thank you. So our third question, the strategic framework says we cultivate a base of leaders who have the skills, analysis, and the support to do this work. National has a great training program. This is not the first time today you hear this. And I am so thankful for those. And I hope, despite the budget problem, you will keep the programs running because they provide us with the skills and analysis. Now, the support part, this is trickier. First of all, nobody's perfect. And leadership is a lonely road. And the Sierra Club is complicated. So like many other entities, CCC does not have a term limits. So we have many long-time leaders. The club says we need new leaders, minorities under 50. There has been some problems that have been long existing subconsciously in our culture, in the club culture, such as ageism, racism, sexism. So in 2019, the club updated standards of conduct. In 2021, equal opportunity policy. And Patrick Murphy, VP for chapters, came here twice, talked about a system for volunteers to file complaints. And he said the queue was long and they were hiring more people to do it. Okay, now you're laying off people. So what can new leaders expect practically to get support? Chad, you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, we could have a whole hour discussion just on that question. It's an important one. I'll just say this. I think where we're moving as an organization is toward a place that that really honors our standards of conduct in a genuine way and encourages people to, you know, as I said before, treat each other with respect, listen carefully, honor and respect disagreement and dissent, and again, just treat each other well and respectfully, and that when we fail there in our interactions, that the process will be, by and large, in most cases, more about a conversation and about learning and about teaching people and giving them the tools they need to do better and to treat each other better, consistent with our standards of conduct. And due process is a part of that. And I think that's where we're moving as an organization, to honor all of that. And I think that's a very good and healthy thing. And so, obviously, you know, we're going through, you know, some financial upheaval right now, some financial transformation. I think we're going to come out of it stronger. And I think the way that we're moving as an organization, dealing with our standards of conduct and dealing with internal disputes or conflicts, is going to land us in a far, far better place in the coming months and in the coming years.
Meghan?
Yeah, I agree with what Chad just said. You know, the power of the Sierra Club is so awesome, right? and yet it's, you know, it's made of people, right? And we reflect society. We don't exist in a Sierra Club bubble. And so I think as we're evolving, you know, as human beings on this planet together, like hopefully working together, we're also evolving in our thinking, in our consideration of others. And the Sierra Club is no different. And I think that, you know, I was mayor during COVID, right? And I was still a council member during the murder of George Floyd, and we were dealing with, our own city budget and policing and how we were looking at public safety, how we were building systems of equity and not punishment. And it is hard work. And it's interesting because having that background as coming into Sierra Club with that background and that perspective, I see that we're struggling with a lot of those same issues as a club that we were, in city government. And I'm so inspired by the work that's the really intentional work that we're doing as a club, not only to confront these, these really existential issues of, fairness and justice and how we treat each other as human beings. There's been a lot of courageous conversations around that. And then, I think sometimes we have overcorrections, right? Where we get so passionate, as Allison said earlier, we get so passionate that we want to just, we want to be the best. I feel like a lot of us just want to be the best. We're also very, we're a club of, we're an organization of leaders, right? That's not always easy to manage when everybody's a leader and everybody's like, okay, here, follow me. And so I think that, especially with our new leadership, with Ben Jealous, we have this extraordinary capacity and opportunity to evolve. And I think our job as a board, our job as an organization, our job as individuals is to help one another on that way. And, I think
Meghan,
sometimes
just a reminder that Hoiyin has asked you all to keep your responses to about 2 minutes because she's got a lot of questions.
Sure.
You're a little over 3 now, so.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see the timer. So if there's
I don't have a time. I'm not running the
oh,
time.
okay. My apologies.
No, my fault. I should have alerted you, but just try to keep it at about under 3 minutes.
I'll time myself next time.
You want to finish the thought? Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Now I've got a timer going. So I think there were several questions in your question, Hoiyin. I don't think we've done, we're learning. We're on a learning journey, and it's a forever learning journey. And I don't think that we've done a good job talking about how we grow our base, because it often sounds like we're asking folks to leave, and that's not the case at all. We need lots of people. We need more people. We need those whose shoulders that we're standing on, who have helped us, arrive where we are today. And so I think that's part of it. Yes, I am human. I make mistakes, and I am looking, to be part of a Sierra Club that also holds grace for one another. And I thrive in a community where there's collective care, and we really think about how we support one another. It starts from knowing what we ourselves need in order to, be a part of this marathon. It's not a sprint. There are lots of sprints in our journey, and as we know, the fight's going to go on. So I think it's all of that. How do we build relationship? At our recent board meeting, we spent a lot of time trying to create space where we could each show up honestly, with our vulnerabilities, our curiosities, our frustrations, and our hopes. And I think was largely successful in doing that for the folks who were able to show up in person, as well as our folks, our community that was that had to participate remotely because of other personal responsibilities. So I think that's part of it. Is the key is really having grace for one another.
Thank you. Okay, question number 4. The strategic framework says align budgets and the resources towards 2024 outcomes and create a compelling case for support for donors and the funders. So what role can conservation volunteers play in this? Who would like to start? Allison?
Yeah, I would totally. You know what you're experiencing, what we've heard from Brandon, I think really exemplifies this so much. And part of the restructuring is to, really have our conservation folks, the strategies and the tactics, aligned with our digital folks, our advancement folks, because it is the work that attracts support. Our outcomes, our ability to build that movement, to create and facilitate change on behalf of those, who are most impacted by the various policies and issues at hand, and Sierra Club, period. The fact that we're everywhere, in every state, in every major city, we have folks on the ground who can deliver on these priorities, is what makes Sierra Club so attractive and so unique for activists, donors, funders, and compelling to potential partnerships. So I think we're perfectly structured for this. And again, what we heard from Brandon in, trying to juggle the legislative priorities, the competing interests, is that dance that we're constantly doing, right? What is the lever at this moment that can result in the win that really then builds additional power and momentum? Because at the end of the day, our strength is in our people. And it's great that there are 500,000 in California, and how do we get that to 1 million or 2 million or 5 million? Ambitious. Meghan, Chad, who wants to hop in?
Chad, do you want to go ahead?
Oh, sure. The short answer is, this aligning budgetary allocations with our priorities, is obviously it's in the broader sense, it's an organizational responsibility, because the members, hold the board accountable and elect the board members. At the end of the day, the buck stops with the board. That's our job as directors to make sure that alignment happens. Candidly, I think that we passed the board passed the strategic framework in the fall of 2021. So it's a relatively new document, really important document. Candidly, I think that we did not do a good job initially of moving toward that alignment of our key objectives and our fundraising and our budgetary allocations. I think we're doing a much better job now, and I think we're going to do a better job in the near future, and even better job still. So I think we are now on a path to doing that, because at the end of the day, the strategic framework has to be real. It can't just be something that we pass and say, this sounds good, but then not really do it. In order to really do it and accomplish it, the money has to be allocated in a way that realistically will help us to achieve those goals. 30 by 30, and dramatically reducing our carbon emissions from in the energy sector. So I think we're doing that now. And so, again, I feel optimistic about that in a way that I wouldn't have said that I was a year ago, for example.
Okay, I'm putting my timer on.
She does this to me too, Megan. Don't take it personally.
No, I don't want to hog the space. Yeah. So yeah, this is incredibly important work right now, is to align, the resources, align our resources so that we can best, do the best work that we possibly can. And there's some pain happening right now as we realign that. At the end of the day, I too am very optimistic about the path we're on currently. because what we're looking for is structural stability, equity among staff. So there's, so that there's pay equity, and ultimately making sure that we are on strong financial footing so that we can accomplish the work of saving the planet, which, we can't afford to fail at this work. And so, the changes that are happening structurally in the club right now, I'm very confident are heading us toward this path of stability and equity. And so I was very optimistic at our last board meeting to hear from executive staff the path that they've set out so that we can get there, and ultimately empowering all of our volunteers so that we can go do the work, because there's plenty ahead. Also putting ourselves in a position where we can be raising the money, right? Getting our A game on so we can raise that money so that we can keep forward. Now I'm at time.
All right, so our next question, I mean, by now, I think even some of the members of the audience never heard about the budget problem and restructuring. By now, they have a clue that many people are concerned about this. Of course, some people also think this is a glass half full for the changes we always wanted to do a long time ago. So again, the club's power is the number of activists, volunteers, but volunteers don't always understand or agree with the staff on Sierra Club's positions. We have some really knowledgeable staffers, and they're really articulate in explaining club's positions. However, our teeny little staff team, it's impossible for them to be responsible, interactive with this giant volunteer body. So this creates frustration on both sides. And now we have two problems. We're losing members and donations, and we're laying off staff. So we would like to hear some strategies, implementation, realistic timelines for us to stay encouraged in the near future. So Allison, I'm going to throw this at you again.
Yeah. Well, one really important thing is communication. We heard earlier. It is also, I think, the mechanism that Sierra Club California, which is coordinating amongst 13 chapters, right, sets up forums, structures to help solicit and and deliberate from key stakeholders. So I think communication channels are key about that. I also think that there is an additional investment in what does it look like to do training on the broad scale. How do we equip? And I know you have a session after this, right? Strategy for cultivating leadership, which is about this idea of, so what's it look like to really be more intentional about the many ways that you can bring folks in along a pathway or, an experience where they willingly, want to take on deeper engagement, increasing responsibility. And how do we, as part of our leadership responsibility, prepare to pass the baton in order to cultivate, empower others to, when you are in a position of leadership, I think you get a different lens on the investment and the commitment that's required to help continually support and cultivate growth in an organization like Sierra Club. And so how do we do ourselves, recruit new leaders, pass the baton to them, and find other ways to lead? There's no shortage. Meghan said this earlier, Chad, Brandon, there's no shortage of ways to contribute in an organization that does so much as Sierra Club. So you will see the advocacy program that folks talked about. Sierra Academy is another training program that we'll be hearing about, and lots of that, most of those ways of providing learning opportunities and growth and development opportunities for individual leaders. It's about training folks to build their own skill and then cultivate that in others. That's it for me.
Who will go next?
I can go if putting on the timer again. I'm gonna put this in the Q&A because the chat's been disabled, but for those who like really want to take a deep dive, hopefully you can see the link in the Q&A. We have a reorganization Q&A hub. That's a forward-facing public document. We've had so many questions, and just to be perfectly honest, questions that are so detailed that I don't have all the responses. And so these are like really well thought out questions and answers, and a level of detail that I hope some folks will find helpful. And there's an opportunity here to also put your own questions. So if you have further questions, please, I encourage all of you to ask them there and get the same level of detailed response. Again, like again, even with all of the challenges, and we definitely have challenges, like what really comforts me is when Vangelis, started by doing a listening tour, went to a lot of chapters and intends to go visit every chapter in the club, and has had these really close conversations with volunteers, staff members, and allies, like all kinds of stakeholders. And so I feel like the work now is really rooted in that listening, in that deep dive. And there's chapters that have never been visited by the executive director ever, right? And so I think this deep listening, you're going to see really reflected in the outcomes that we're going to get to. Investing in chapters, top priority. Investing in training, really top priority. And then being able to communicate that all. That's at 10. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll add just a couple of quick thoughts to that. I think there were two questions there. I think they're both important. I'll try to answer them both if I can. So, the first question really goes to, what we call the jurisdiction policy, and it just kind of outlines, how decisions get made. So the Conservation Policy Committee recommends policies, the board passes those policies. And when we take positions as an organization, they're supposed to be consistent with those policies. So basically an implementation of our policies that we pass as a board. And generally speaking, that we go through a public input process among chapters as we're creating and recommending new policies. And I support that strongly. Okay, so occasionally there are disagreements about whether or not a position that we take is a correct or accurate implementation of the policy. And when there are those disagreements, we have procedures to deal with that, how we handle those disagreements. And again, that's in our jurisdiction policy. And so that's available for folks who want it. You can contact the Conservation Policy Committee if you can't find it. The second question, I think, is really a deeper philosophical question. It's a really important one, and I think it warrants a lot more discussion. But just briefly, I think how we adduce more support, how we grow our volunteer network, the real backbone of the Sierra Club, our activists, and strengthen the coordination between activists and our amazing staff. I think that we do a really good job as an organization on defense. I think we do a great job. I think that we have work to do on big, bold, visionary offense. And the reason I say that is, first of all, that's how we accomplish our mission in large part, but also because that's what gets people excited and inspired and encourages them to join the Sierra Club and get really involved.
All right, so we have one more planned question. First, I want to say Thanks to you folks for sending me questions. I got lots of questions, including some spicy questions. Before we move on to the next one, I want to invite Director Shruti from Maryland to join the next question. And I would also like to ask Shruti to start with her 2 minutes self-intro, and then we will move on to the questions. So Shruti, are you here?
Yes, I am. Thank you so much, Hoiyin. And I want to start by, first of all, thanking everybody on this call for welcoming me into this space. My name is Shruti Bhatnagar, pronouns she, her. I live in Maryland on the occupied land of the Piscataway tribe. I am a newly elected board member, but have served on the Montgomery County, Maryland group, currently also serving as the Conservation Chair for Maryland chapter and on the Conservation Policy Committee for the National Sierra Club. I have been serving as the co-lead for the National Federal Organizing Program. And I give this context to share with all of you that first and foremost, to several things that were said today, the power of our organization with volunteers has become so much more relevant in the times that we are in with the budget deficit and losing some of our staff. But I want to say thanks to each and every one of you, because as volunteer leaders, you have been doing incredible work in your community. And that as we talk about the next steps in terms of trainings and what's happening that you'll be hearing more about, it's been inspiring for me to see the work that's been happening in California that I heard from Brandon, and have talked to several leaders here who are on the call today. So with that, I want to just not introduce myself anymore, but would be happy to share a few thoughts and touch on some of the things that have come up during this conversation.
All right, so the next question is, how can we help you? Allison, you want to start? You're nodding.
Sure. That's a great question. Thank you for the question. You know, I always start with know what you need. Again, you know what you need to be sustained, supported, to really thrive, and do this work with joy, right? Because it's hard work. You all know. I think when you yourself are in a good place and supported, then you can, you know, support and lead others. And I think that one of the things that's so critical for Sierra Club is building our movement, building a broader base. So recruiting others to be leaders, to be advocates, to join, and thinking about how you nurture and cultivate, again, an environment of engagement where folks are truly nourished, and enjoying what they do. When that's true, they can reach in and access more. One of the things I think I love best about working in teams and working as teams is to, you know, help someone else's light shine brighter, help folks to tap into their superpowers and to really bring that to reality. So that's what I encourage and invite folks to do. And again, with grace and compassion.
Surely you're unmuted. Might as well just go. You're muted now.
Sorry. So I saved 26 seconds earlier, so I hope I can get some grace on my response here. You know, speaking for myself, we need everyone in the climate movement right now, everyone. And so this is about sharing power and bringing more people. When we talk about the HEMES principles and we talk about being inclusive and creating a more just climate movement, it also means when we are talking about letting people speak for themselves, what does it really look like? I have been part of the Changemaker training series, community advocates training program that's happening right now, and other initiatives that we are talking about. And one of the things that I have been trying to lift is when we talk about these principles and values, we need to be thinking about reaching into communities, organizing at the local level, empowering our local leaders to engage the communities to speak for themselves. And that's really important. It touches on the point that Brandon was talking about, those stories. Storytelling is really powerful. Each and every one of us here has a voice, has a unique story to tell, either for ourselves or for our communities or for our relatives or someone, a friend, a family who may have been impacted by the issues that are affecting on climate change and how our communities are being impacted. 17.3 million people living within half a mile of a well include Hispanic, Black, Asian, and Native American people. The issues that were touched on today that I know California activists and chapters have been working on, whether it's forest conservation, water issues, oil and gas drilling, all of these issues are impacting these communities. And those frontline communities that are being impacted need to have a voice in our movement. So all of you are leaders in your community. You can organize locally, have those storytelling sessions where you can build stronger communities and bring those people in to work with us and to help build a stronger, more inclusive and just climate movement. And that's what I wanted to lift up here today, because I think it's really important for us to be able to build capacity given the budget constraints and bring more people to work with us and take forward the work that we all need to do. Thank you.
Megan, get your timer on.
Get my timer on. Wow, it's hard to follow after Allison and Shruti. I so agree with everything that's just been said. I really appreciate that. I'll add, in addition, we need the power of your policy, your understanding of policy, right? Like I think of the Inflation Reduction Act and this massive influx of money into new infrastructure that we haven't seen in a generation or two in the United States. And we know that in the past, that kind of influx of money for infrastructure on a national level has brought us freeways. Right. Right. It has separated communities. It has, epitomized racism. And so as we have like the amazing opportunity to invest in climate solutions, it is on all of us, and definitely on your committee, to like look through the policies and help us understand, because it's like the amount of work, the amount of information, the amount of legislation is like insane and exciting. But it takes all of you and your brain power to like, nerd out and bring the local voices to the fore so that we can make sure that, our national policies, that our resources, the power of the Sierra Club is working towards something positive and not taking away from communities. So we just, we desperately need you to keep being the eyes and the ears and the brains to make sure things like, hydrogen and all these investments are happening in an equitable and environmental way and not, missing their mark.
I think that these are all great answers to the question. I'll just add one other brief thing. I agree with everything that's been said. I think that two things I would say you all could do to help. One is stay involved. Just continue doing what you're doing, because you're already helping tremendously. Our volunteer leaders are the engine of the Sierra Club. This is what separates us from other, large national environmental groups. It's what gives us our unique power to influence policy and to make change. I would also say, we've gone through a difficult period of time over the past couple of years as an organization, and I think a number of really, really good people, really important activists have left the organization. And so just on a personal note, I would say, one thing that people could do to help is, reach out to those people and ask them to come back, encourage them to come back. We need them. And I think we are moving in a better direction now.
All right, thank you. Well, I see no questions in the Q&A unless, Nathan, do you agree? There's no question in the Q&A?
There's a ton of questions in the Q&A, Hoiyin.
Okay, why don't you start reading?
Okay, sure. Okay, first question is, how has the club suffered from COVID-related isolation, i.e. lack of face-to-face meetings for chapters, groups, as well as the board of directors?
Huh, good question. Good question. Yeah, it's funny. I don't see questions either, but thanks, Nathan, for passing that along. It's been hard, right? I mean, gosh, here we are going on 3 years, just starting some hybrid sessions and getting together. And I imagine hybrid's going to be part of our future, for a while, just because everyone has different considerations to factor in. One number I will notice, and I'm not going to know it in detail, but I was trying to look at a pre-COVID number of members and champions. I think Meghan and I were chatting the other day, and pre-COVID, we were at around 4 million champions, so members and supporters. And now we're around 2 million. So that number has dropped. And I mean, I don't know all the factors, but I do think that, COVID's got to be a good part of that. The economy might be part of that. There is so much noise and chatter going on in, in so many different realms. So I do think that that's part of it. We know that our outings community and leaders, struggled with that because, that was sort of the mainstay and so grounding for folks is to be outdoors and to get out there and to be able to facilitate excursions for others. So I think we're looking at what it means to be reconnecting and, encouraging folks as they are comfortable and able to begin reconnecting with each other. Zoom was helpful. I know I learned that there could be more deeper connection through a video conferencing than to not be able to see folks, but it was hard. It was hard for me too.
Nathan,
Yeah.
go for the next question.
Okay. How can chapters take advantage of what Hoiyin spoke about in terms of cultivating a strong leadership pace? How can we move beyond lip service to the standards of conduct without specifically calling out? Due process was mentioned by Chad as necessary. However, how can we move leadership in that direction?
Chad, you got to call out.
Yeah. So I think this kind of goes to what I was saying earlier. I think that we are going through a process of modifying our procedures internally and how we address conflicts. And I think that it's going to be a much better way of handling things. I think our structure is going to be better. It's certainly going to be rooted in due process and communication. And I think, one of the things that we'll be, doing is kind of instituting a more of an ombudsman approach that's going to be incorporated, which, really encourages communication between people rather than kind of going from 0 to 60 to, full escalation, which can sometimes, actually exacerbate conflict. So I think that's in motion right now. It's not fully implemented by any means, but I think, by the end of this year, we are going to be in a very, very different place and moving forward beyond that. And that's what encourages me because, the way we've been doing things, I think, had the risk of potentially, worsening conflicts and making people, feel like they had no place in the organization. And I think that we're moving in a direction that is very much the opposite of that. And that's a good thing.
Yeah, I'll add, I think part of this, Chad, you had mentioned earlier, responsible, respectful, engagement with one another. So how do we treat each other with, the inherent dignity that each person has, right? Value them, respect them. Again, knowing what we need, knowing what they need. I really like the collectivism, which is taking accountability and responsibility for ourselves, but also for one another, those that we're working with and partnering with.
Nathan, let's go for one last one, quick one, or 2 minutes.
Oh, just 2 minutes. Oh, I was gonna ask a spicy one next. Oh man. All right. Well, it's the only one that I can see that there were a couple questions about the complaints process, like how, one person mentioned a complaint filed a year ago that hasn't been acted on, and another person mentioned that it seems like the equity department is being dismantled. So what's the plan for addressing all of the complaints that have been filed that are still in process?
I'm going to maybe start on that and just say that Sierra Club's commitment to equity is never been stronger. I do think that we are going to be seeing a paradigm shift for how we approach or talk about, sort of the principles of equity, shifting away from more performative aspects or superficially talking about equity without following up with the, then associated behaviors, and really thinking about, deep belonging. And this is our people chief, Ida Davis, who's a scholar in this area. As you are welcome. Everyone has inherent dignity. And again, creating and cultivating an environment where we thrive, not where we survive oppression, right? Whatever the oppressive behavior is, but where we each thrive. And so the commitment's never been deeper, and and so I think you will be seeing that as we roll that out more broadly. And the complaints process, as Chad said, we're in the process of iterating that. Something was put in place in response to some, very very cruel behaviors, and at the end of the day, a process for complaints wants to bring justice to everybody involved, victims, subjects of complaints. And so I think we need processes that are, more wholesome and really serve the needs of everybody who's been impacted by that experience.
Awesome.
And, again, the fact that things have taken so long to resolve is also just something that we have to address at the same time.
Thank you so much. 4 board members were super flattered that you joined us, and feel free to stay with us for the rest of the session today, or feel free to leave, enjoy your Saturday. Thank you so much. I just cannot imagine how busy you are.
Well, deep gratitude for all of you for having us. Thank you so much, and deep appreciation for everything you're doing and everything you will be doing.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to take a break.